Hello everyone, my name's Zenitsu, and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So today I'm going to be taking a look at BT15, and BT15 offers us lots of new and powerful tools to be able to build and iterate on some new and existing decks. And today's deck I'm going to be taking a look at is going to be the latest version of Digipolice. So Digipolice started in BT14, and Digipolice kind of wanted to be a Commandramon focused deck that just so happened to have the Digipolice tag. And now in BT15, we do have more Digipolice to flesh out what you could actually do with Digipolice. Digipolice, at the end of the day, is a more control and defensive style deck where it wants to focus on blocking and spawning Digimon to ideally have alternative ways to block, because what you're spawning should also have that ability to stop the opponent's overall aggression. Then, when it needs to, it can take advantage of the fact that it wants to have its own wide field to have its own level of offensive pushes and plays. The biggest weakness of the deck is, well, it is a stack-based deck, so it does come with some minor inconsistencies going up the chain and making sure you can find all of your parts and pieces that you need. But there is just a lot of anti-swarm tech that's floating around that can make it certain matchups worse, and on top of that, because the deck is kind of having a small identity crisis, utilizing two completely separate packages with two completely separate game plans and supporting cards that it wants to play around with, it sometimes could clash with one another, which could leave you with some really awkward stacks and plays. But regardless, it's definitely a really fun and interesting deck that's going to be getting better in the future. So with all that said and done, let's just dive right into the deck profile. Starting off with the Digitamers, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Missimon. So Missimon is just the best egg for the way that I'm approaching the deck, because Missimon's ability lets us be able to stack our deck with our D-brigade and Digipolice cards from our trash, so that way we could rig our abilities while also having access at the cards in our trash to be able to reuse for various different purposes. Then this Digimon also is going to get 2000 DP for doing so, which allows our Digimon to be a little bit more on the aggressive side in case we need to hit specific numbers to clear specific bodies. Then on top of that, if you wanted to, you could run 1 copy of Kyokyomon as the 5th Digi Egg. I just never really found it to be that impactful in terms of the card draw, and I'd rather have what Missimon is doing instead. But when it comes to the level 3s, I am going to be running a pure Commandramon package. So I am more focused on D-brigades rather than Digipolice as a whole at this point, just because I find what D-brigades in Commandramon is doing on the low end is way more impactful than what Digipolice is doing. So I'm going to be running 4 copies of Commandramon from BT14. This is just the deck's dedicated digging or searching tool, looking for our Digipolice and D-brigade traded cards. Then on top of that, his inheritable ability is absolutely insane for adding protection to any Digimon that's digivolving on top of him, just because during all turns when this Digimon would leave the battle area, other than your own card effects, by deleting one of your other Digimon with D-brigade in its traits, we get to prevent the Digimon from leaving play. So this is just really good at having some of the best protection that the game has to offer, which doubles down and incentivizes why I want to run D-brigades more than just Digipolice, because of the more native D-brigade support and synergy. Which is why I'm going to be running 4 copies of the EX3 Commandramon, because he comes with the decoy ability natively for D-brigade traded cards. So more protection is just never a bad thing. And I'm also going to be running 4 copies of the BT4 Commandramon. So the BT4 Commandramon is one of the best rookies that we have to work with to be able to float bodies, to make sure that we have a body on the field to use for whatever purposes we feel like we need to. So it has the on-delete ability to reveal the top 3 cards of our deck, and we get to play 1 Commandramon card from among them for free, and then the rest go to the bottom, which, as we know with our egg, we have ways out being able to rig the top of our deck, so we are guaranteed to be able to have higher levels of success utilizing this Commandramon's ability. on top of all of the different versatile ways that we could utilize the card offensively and defensively. And then the last rookie of the deck is going to be 2 copies of the BT3 Commandramon. So this is just a good card, not only just because it's a Commandramon named card and a D-brigade traded card, but also the stat line is something that I really want to try to take advantage of. So what about Ryudamon? So I know Ryudamon is the brand new rookie for Digipolice, more specifically, that came out in BT15, and it's not like I think he's a bad card, it's just I think that he's a little bit awkward for where the deck currently is. So the deck, as I kind of already stated before, is kind of fighting between 2 different strategies, one being the X-Antibody side of Digipolice, and the other being D-brigade side of Digipolice, and the 2 don't necessarily mesh very well together, considering Missimon out of the eggs of Kyokomon and Missimon for Digipolice is the better egg, so by running Ryudamon, you kind of have to run the worse egg, and also by running Ryudamon, you're kind of forced to then run the BT7 Dorumon as the next best supporting rookie, just because it is an X-Antibody traded card, and does have some pretty decent synergy with abilities like Mind Link. But it's not a Digipolice traded card, and it's also not a D-brigade traded card, so it does still have some inherent awkwardness when it comes to the deck, and I don't necessarily think it's worth the sacrifice just to include Ryudamon over what the D-brigade package is doing. But getting it back on track, when it comes to the level 4s, all of the level 4s are going to be Digipolice traded cards, so they have some really good flow with the majority of our deck. But I'm going to be running 4 copies of High Commandramon as the main level 4 that we want to use, because it just has some of the best synergy with the rest of the cards in our deck, because he is a D-brigade traded card, and he's also going to be treated as just a Commandramon as well. So what this card is doing natively is he has a nice when attacking ability, where we get to reveal the top 3 cards of our deck and play a D-brigade or Digipolice traded card with a play cost of 3 or less among them for free. So just the fact that we could use him to swarm the field is really, really good, because it allows us to use him more aggressively. Then on top of that, he comes with that same inheritable ability as what we saw with the BT14 Commandramon, so having multiple instances of this protection is really, really good at making sure you can keep your Digimon around as long as possible. And the longer our Digimon stay around, the more value we could accrue from them. And then I'm going to be running 3 copies of Numemon. So Numemon from BT14 has a really decent on-play and when digivolving ability to be able to play out a Satsuki from our hand at the bottom of this Digimon's Digivolution source and give one of our Digimon rush for the turn, again incentivizing us for using our cards a little bit more aggressively, while also making sure we have a way to set up a Tamer on the field. And then the last champion of the deck is going to be 3 copies of Ginryumon. So Ginryumon is a pretty awkward card for this deck to use. I haven't really been able to utilize him super effectively, at least not natively. He's still okay because he could digivolve cheaper on top of X-Antibodies in Digipolice, which only really matters if we're using BT14 Commandramon for this style of deck, but he does have the Digipolice tag, which means we could use him to play him out alternatively, because he has the blocker ability native to him, so it doesn't matter how we get him on the field, he's just always going to be able to stop some of the opponent's aggression, while also having the flexibility of having a nice on-play and when digivolving ability. So regardless of how you're playing him, we still get to suspend one of the opponent's Digimon down. Then he has the extra benefit where if we have a Tamer with Digipolice in its traits in this Digimon's Digivolution source, which we're realistically only ever going to do if we digivolve into him on top of a rookie, and the rookie has to have a Tamer set up underneath it utilizing Mind Link. otherwise we're not going to be able to get the extra ability to have the opponent's Digimon unable to unsuspend until the end of their turn. So it's really nice when we get this ability off, but most of the time the suspend just doesn't really matter based on how we're actually able to play this card. But the inheritable ability is still pretty decent at being able to have ways to suspend the opponent's Digimon down to trigger some of our various other abilities, because during all turns once per turn, when this Digimon becomes suspended, so whether we're attacking or blocking, it doesn't matter, we get to suspend one of the opponent's Digimon or Tamers in play with a play cost equal to or less than this Digimon's play cost, which is nice at, again, just having some extra ways to control and manipulate the field. And then when it comes to the level 5s, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Cargo Dramon. So Cargo Dramon has some pretty decent flexibility, again having an on-play and when digivolving effect, to reveal the top 3 cards of our deck and play one card with D-brigade or D-police in its traits with a play cost of 4 or less from among them for free, and then trash the rest, having alternative ways to continuously try to play out our Digimon and swarm the field. Then he has a nice inheritable ability for our higher stages to take advantage of, to make sure we could try to keep our bodies on the field or a body on the field as best as we can. So its all turns ability allows us once per turn, when one of our other Digimon is deleted, we can reveal the top 3 cards of our deck and play one Commandramon from among them for free and trash the rest. So again, it's just doubling down and incentivizing us for utilizing our Commandramon and D-brigade cards more specifically. But the 3 copies of Hisaryumon is still a pretty good card to use because it also has the blocker ability while having a really powerful all turns ability native to him that basically turns our higher level Digimon into pseudo aces. So when an effect suspends another Digimon or Tamer down, if he has a Tamer with a Digipolice in its traits in his Digivolution source, then we get a Digivolve into a Digimon with Beast Dragon or Digipolice in its traits from our hand for free. It's a really powerful ability, but does require a little bit of setup in order to get it off. Then he also has a good inheritable ability that lets our Digimon have even higher levels of usability on both the offensive and defensive side, because during all turns once per turn, when an effect suspends another Digimon or Tamer down, then we get to unsuspend one of our Digimon with a Beast Dragon or Digipolice in its traits. And then when it comes to the level 6s, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Brigade Dramon. So he's still the main mega, at least on how I built the deck, because I am more D-brigade focused. So he has a when digivolving ability to delete up to a total play cost of 7 worth of the opponent's Digimon. So it's just a good way to control the mid to low level Digimon, while also having an ability that triggers on the opponent's turn to turn all of our D-brigades into blockers. And he even has a nice end of your turn ability that triggers once per turn to reveal the top 3 cards of our deck and play a total of 7 play cost worth of cards. That's D-brigade or Digipolice in its traits from among them for free and trash the rest. Again, doubling down on us wanting to flood and swarm the field. And then the supporting mega I'm going to be running for the deck is going to be 2 copies of Oriumon. So Oriumon natively has the blocker ability, and he has some really strong removal potential. So he has this ability where when we digivolve up into him, if there's a Tamer with Digipolice in its traits in his inheritable sources, then we get to return one of the opponent's suspended Digimon or Tamers to the bottom of the deck, which is just really strong at making sure that we could remove the opponent's threats. But again, it is a little bit awkward to be able to line up this ability at times, and if we don't have a Tamer in his inheritable source, when we digivolve up into him, then we do not get this ability at all, which is just lost value. But regardless, his secondary ability is still really decent, because when this Digimon becomes suspended, we get to play 1 card with a Beast Dragon or Digipolice in its traits and have 5,000 DP or less from our hand for free to be able to try to spawn out our lower level Digimon, but it's only impacting Beast Dragons and Digipolice, so it does have some slight awkward synergy there, which is why I'm not doubling down and focusing on Oriumon. And then when it comes to the level 7s, I'm just going to keep it simple and run one copy of Quartzmon. You don't necessarily have to run a level 7 in the deck if you don't want one, but there's no real reason not to run either Quartzmon or Deathexmon. But Quartzmon is just really good because it incentivizes us from flooding the field and rewards us for doing so, making it a little cheaper to go up into if we actually want to use it, whilst unlocking basically everything on the field and even continuously suspending the opponent's cards down, and rewards us for having a whole bunch of cards suspended to put lots of pressure on the opponent's security, allowing us to have an easy way to potentially win the game alternatively with. And then when it comes to the Tamers, I'm just going to be running some D-Police traded Tamers. So I'm running 4 copies of Satsuki as the main Tamer because she is a little bit easier to use, having a lower play cost, on top of the fact that we're using Numemon to be able to play her out for free. Well, it's technically playing her underneath him, but regardless, it's setting up our Satsuki to take full advantage of her, because at the start of our main phase, while she's on the field, if the opponent has a Digimon in play, then we get to gain a memory on top of her Mind Link ability, working with Numemon, Manzemon, and Digi Police. So even though it doesn't work with all of our D-brigades, we're mostly just going to be using her on our higher stage Digimon anyway. But she's still a really good card to throw underneath our Digimon for her inheritable ability to give our Numemon, Manzemon, or Digipolice the jamming ability and the reboot ability to make our attacks safe. And if we're keeping her underneath, then being able to restand to make our Digimon blockers is also really nice, while having the end of all turns ability to split her out, so that way we can pick and choose when we want to have her stay in the inheritables and when she should come out onto the field. And the 2 copies of Shu are kind of doing something similar. She's just going to be the memory setting Tamer instead of just generically gaining us memory. She's working with X antibodies in Digipolice, and on top of that, instead of jamming, she's giving us Alliance as an inheritable to play around with. She's still pretty decent because we still have ways to play her out alternatively off of our Cargo and off of our Brigade as well, because she's still a Digipolice traded card. Then when it comes to the options, I'm just, again, keeping it relatively simple, running 4 copies of defensive training because there's no reason not to, because it's a good searcher and it allows us to use for later to make our evolutions a little bit more efficient. Then the removal option of the deck is going to be 2 copies of DCD Bomb because it is a D-brigade traded card, so it does work with some of our cards that want to shove D-brigades back on top of our deck, like itself, where we get to de-digivolve 1 on one of the opponent's Digimon, then return 3 cards with D-brigade or D-police in its traits from our trash to the top of our deck, and delete a total play cost of 6 worth of the opponent's Digimon, while being a decent security threat, activating its main out of security. But that's pretty much it for my interpretation of the deck. As I kind of already stated, there is just some slight awkward synergy between the 2 different evolution lines. They are kind of in conflicts, but I think the D-brigade side of things is still just easier to use, has more support, and the Oriumon cards are just in here to flesh out what D-police actually is and can do until we get our future support to actually make the deck even better. But there's still just a whole bunch of other useful cards to think about if you want to customize the deck to fit your own personal liking and playstyle based on the cards that you have access to, what your expected meta is going to be, and what you generally just want to try to focus on in play. Digipolice has a whole bunch of different ways to be able to flesh itself out to accommodate most players' needs. And then, as I already stated before, we already know that D-brigade and Digipolice is getting a whole new evolutionary line in BT16, which is why I'm not already super heavily focusing on the Oriumon stuff, because it's just going to be replaced with all of the new BT16 stuff, and we even have a nice new option to also further incentivize and double down on D-brigades and Digipolice as the main focus of the deck.